ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तन्न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः संगस्तेषु उपजायते संगात् संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोधो विजायते. Yesterday we discussed, Lord Krishna shows us what we may call a ladder of fall, how Vishaya Dhyanam, one is dwelling upon the sense objects, how from the dwelling arises Sangaha, an attachment or liking for the objects. Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha, how from the general liking arises a strong desire or a craving to possess and enjoy that object. Kamat Krodho Vijayate, and from that craving arises anger when that craving is not fulfilled. And when the craving is fulfilled, what happens is the craving grows. That's the plight of an ordinary person. That when the person's desire is fulfilled, when I gain something that I want, then the want only grows in intensity. If that want is further fulfilled, well, again it will grow in further intensity, like pouring butter in the fire. And so when ultimately that craving is not fulfilled, when some obstacle comes, there is going to be an anger of the same intensity of that craving itself. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. From anger arises sammoha, a delusion, meaning mind becomes deluded, totally perturbed, disturbed. Sammohat smriti vibraha. The clarity is gone. Smriti vibraha, vibhramaha. And smriti meaning whatever wisdom I have, whatever knowledge I have, or whatever sense of discrimination I have, which I have gained as a result of my past education, training, upbringing, whatever, which normally should be available to me for responding to different situations. When my mind gets deluded, that very knowledge of the wisdom is not available. Smriti bhramshat buddhinashaha. And therefore, that discriminative sense which should guide the various decisions that I am making in different situations, that very discrimination is not available. Buddhinashat pranashyati. And therefore, the ability of the intellect to be able to discriminate between the right and wrong is lost. Pranashyati. And therefore, the action that a person performs is not in keeping with the dignity of the person, or the place, or not in keeping with the values. Not even in keeping with his human being, that he is a human being. His actions do not even remain what we may classify as human actions. Out of anger, etc., the actions that are performed very often are only violence in human actions. Buddhinashat pranashyati. Thus, the ability of the intellect to decide or to judge what is right and wrong, to discriminate between right and wrong, that very ability gets lost. And that itself is the loss of the person. Because after all, who is a human being? In what way is it different from animals? The basic instincts of the animals and human beings, the four basic instincts are similar. Ahara, nidra, bhaya, maithunam cha, samanyametat pashubhir naranam. There is a verse in Sanskrit which says that these instincts are common between human beings and animals. Ahara, meaning food, so desire, that hunger and thirst. nidra, need for sleep or rest, bhaya, fear, and therefore protection of oneself, self-preservation, and maithunam, the gratification of the senses. Samanyametat pashubhir naranam. This is common between the human beings and animals. So human beings also want food to appease hunger and thirst. They also want to sleep, also want to protect themselves, and also wants gratification at the sensuous level. So what distinguishes a human being from an animal? Dharmo hitesham adhiko vishesha. As far as human beings are concerned, it is dharma. Dharma is righteousness, meaning an action that is performed with the sense of discrimination. What is proper and what is improper. Karya, akarya, bhaya, abhaya. So what is desirable, what is undesirable, what is proper, what is improper. That dharma, the functioning of a human being in accordance with the order, the righteous order or moral order, so that morality or the righteousness alone is something that distinguishes a human being, and that is in the intellect of the human being. It is by the intelligence that the person judges what is dharma and what is adharma, what is right and what is wrong. And it is this that distinguishes human beings from the animals. Dharmena hinaha pashubhis samanaha. Those people who are devoid of dharma, devoid of righteousness, pashubhis samanaha, they are only equal to animals. So if a human being gives way to his passions and impulses and acts out of those, then he is no different from an animal. And this is called the ruin of a human being. Not that he dies or gets destroyed in the physical sense, but really what makes him a human being is this discriminative ability in the intellect. And that gets destroyed as a result of this passion and anger, and that is how he no more remains, he no more can be classified as a human being, although he is walking on his two legs and everything else, but he can be called a biped or whatever. But what really makes him a human being is no more. That's why it is said, buddhinashat pranashyati. When one's buddhi, the discriminative sense is gone, pranashyati, that is the ruin of a person. All of this said just to caution, that's all, not to create fear. Then the question is immediately asked, Vishayanam smaranam apiched anasakaranam. If, as you say, even dwelling upon the sense objects is going to lead one to such a ruin, this whole business started with only dwelling upon the sense object. That's all. And this is very beautifully demonstrated in the famous story of Ramayana. There the story is that Rama, the consort Sita, and his younger brother Lakshmana, these three were exiled into forest, and they were living in a hut in a forest. And they were quite happy. And then this Ravana, the demon, Hydra-headed demon Ravana, decided to kidnap Sita because she was so beautiful, whatever. And so he made a plot. He went to his uncle, another demon, whose name is Maricha, and requested this Maricha, his uncle, to cooperate with him. And this Maricha, this demon, became a deer. This is the kind of powers they had. These Rakshasas, the demons, had this kind of powers, that they could change their forms and appear as they desired. So this demon Maricha became a golden deer, a very beautiful golden deer with jewels and things, shining on the skin. And this deer came near the hut where Rama, Lakshmana and Sita they were. And the deer appeared before Sita, it would appear and disappear. Appear and disappear. Would come and then go away. Not just once, several times. Again and again this deer appeared. And Sita saw this, as everyone else also saw. But then Sita said, "Oh, this is a beautiful deer." She said to her husband Rama, "Oh, please get me this deer." Rama said, "We have never heard of a golden deer. Looks like some kind of a magic by these Rakshasas, so don't come under their spell. And I think there's some problem here. Then again the deer came, again went, and this again and again. So this made Sita dwell upon this golden deer. So dhyato vishayan pumsa, when you dwell upon an object for a great length of time, sangasteshu upajayate, arises a love or attachment for that. This is a beautiful deer. And that when it went on, sangat sanjayate kamaha, and there arose a strong desire, I want this deer. How nice would it be if you could make a pet, if this deer would be a pet, So please go and catch him alive. And if you cannot catch him alive, doesn't matter. Let us have his skin. And so, I can take that skin with me, we can make garments out of it, or I can take it back to Ayodhya as a souvenir or whatever. But she was so fascinated by the deer that even though they tried to explain to her that such deer cannot be, she said, no, I must have it. And that is how Rama, the husband, was compelled to chase the deer. That was a plan. Deer wanted this to happen. And as Rama started chasing, he started running farther and farther away. He would just come in the sight of Rama, he would run after him. And all of a sudden disappear and appear again, at a long distance on the top of a hillock. Again Rama would run after him, and like that took away at a long distance. And Rama he ultimately got tired. So what's happening here? And then he took an arrow and shot at the deer, and the deer died at a long distance. As planned, as this deer died, this was a Rakshasa, a demon. He lost all that power. He immediately became a Rakshasa as the arrow hit him. And he instantly died, but before dying, as planned, he just uttered loudly this cry, Hey Sita, Hey Lakshmana. In the voice of Rama, this Rakshasa cried. Here in this hut, Sita and Lakshmana heard in the voice of Rama the names being loudly uttered. And Sita saw that, Rama seems to be in trouble. Surely the deer must have been a Rakshasa, and they seem to have attacked Rama, and he seemed to be in great trouble. So, kamat krodho vijayate, the desire is not fulfilled, and there arises slowly an anger. And she tells Lakshmana, the younger brother of Rama, please go, it seems your elder brother is in great trouble, please go and help him. Then Lakshmana says, no, my elder brother has said that I must remain here and protect you. So I will not go, and I don't think that you should worry, because Rama, there is no one in the world who can ever harm him, so don't worry. This also seems to be some trick of this Rakshasa, so don't worry. He tried to console her, but in no way she was so concerned, and she became so angry as Lakshmana resisted the idea of going behind to help Rama. She became so angry ultimately. She told him all kinds of words and forced him to follow. So whatever sense of discrimination, krodhat bhavati sammoha, she behaves in a manner which is not proper. Sammoha smriti vibhramaha, the delusion, and whatever culture is there is gone for the moment. And under that spell one acts, and the Lakshmana also is sent away. Lakshmana here symbolizes the sense of discrimination, that also is gone. Smrita bhramshat buddhinashah, buddhinashat pralashyati, that buddhi, the discriminative sense also is gone, and she is alone in this hut, and the Ravana, the demon, is waiting for her. He comes and kidnaps her. This is the story. The Sita can be compared to our mind. And how mind, they compare the objects of the world with the golden deer. So as we have discussed any number of times, the objects appear to be very fascinating, charming, offering us happiness, security and everything. They seem to glitter, the objects of the world seem to glitter with happiness and security. And the mind is naturally attracted towards them. And when the buddhi or the intellect argues with the mind, so look, in the past we have had so many experiences that the objects there is only delusion, and it's all maya. But then the mind runs after them and ultimately gets kidnapped. But Ravana is the hydra-headed demon. a hydra-headed demon. The 10 heads stand for the 10 organs, 5 of perception and 5 of action. And it kidnaps the mind, meaning the peace of mind is gone. Mind runs away into the sense pleasures. And thus this is what happens to the person. Thus one who comes under the sway of the sensuous attractions, ultimately the ruin is definite for that person. This is the idea here. And as we said, this is a process that happens to the human beings, and this is described not to create any fear, but as a caution that this is what can happen. Now the next question is, if you say that just by dwelling upon the sense objects, that such a calamity can come to us, then what about even a wise person? Even wise person also has to, even if he does not run after the sense objects, he does have to remain in contact, minimum contact with the sense objects or the world of objects, because he also has to continue his life. And for the sustenance of the life, certain minimum things are needed. And therefore, what will happen to that person also? And so so nobody is an exception or what? Is it that whoever comes in contact with the sense objects is necessarily ruined? Is that the idea? What is just described, is it a rule for everyone or not? Then Lord Krishna says, no, there is an exception. And that's why what is the nature of a wise man, and therefore what should be the value for a seeker of knowledge is then what is said in the verse 64. Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran atmavashyair vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Ragadvesha viyuktaihi tu indriyahi. Tu means however. Ragadvesha viyuktaihi indriyahi. When ragadvesha, raga and dvesha, raga means attachment, dvesha means aversion. So when a person who is devoid of this raga dvesha, so who is a person who is going to invite a ruin by dwelling upon the sense objects? When the mind is polluted by or contaminated by this raga and dvesha. When in the mind there is what we call attachment and aversion, then it is the contact with the sense objects that really leads to what we call this ruin. But if the mind happens to be free from raga dvesha, then that contact does not do that. Usually, says Shankaracharya, tat purassarahi indriyanam pravrittihi svabhaviki. Usually, the activity or the actions of an ordinary person are generally motivated by the likes and dislikes, attachments and aversions. I wish to do something that I like. I wish to avoid something that I don't like. I want that which I like. I want to avoid that which I do not like. And therefore the decisions that I make constantly are governed by what? Moment to moment I make choices. I take something, I give up something. There's all these different choices moment to moment that I make. Whether I take orange juice or grape juice. I take cold water or warm water. I take white rice or brown rice. I take salad or I take something else. All these different choices we keep on making moment to moment. I go for a walk or I don't go for a walk. I go to class or I don't go to class, or whatever it is. I wake up at a given time or I don't wake up. I do a given thing or I don't do. All of this is essentially determined or generally determined by the likes and dislikes in my mind. Tat purassarahi indriyanam pravritti svabhaviki. Usually pravritti, all the activities at the sense level are governed by the likes and dislikes within a person. And therefore, tatrayo mumukshuhu bhavati sahatabhyam vimuktaihi. However, one who is a mumukshu, meaning the one who is desirous of moksha or liberation or knowledge or abiding knowledge, he should know that these likes and dislikes are, and that is going to be described in the third chapter. Indriyasyarthe ragadvesho vyavasthitau tayorna vashamagachet Tauhi asya paripanthino. Says there Lord Krishna that with reference to every sense organ, with corresponding sense objects, there is this raga and dvesha. The likes and dislikes or attachments and aversions already are there in the sense organs. And therefore, the sense organs will necessarily want the sense objects for which they have an attachment, and they will want to avoid those for which it has aversion. And therefore, the activity of the sense organs is generally governed by attachments and aversions. Then what should we do? This is called the prakriti, meaning the nature of a person. And therefore it is said, prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Usually people, the beings follow their nature. Nature means this, attachments and aversion, the attraction and repulsion, likes and dislikes. This is what really constitutes the main aspect of the nature. And usually person's actions and responses are governed by them, and choices. So first thing Lord Krishna says, tayorna vashamagached. Do not come under their spell. Tauhiyasya paripanthino. Understand that these likes and dislikes or attachment and aversions, paripanthino, they are your enemies. They are the robbers. A robber is the one who robs you away even while you are watching. A thief is the one who stealthily comes and takes away without your knowledge. But a robber is the one who comes in daylight and he robs away. And similarly, these likes and dislikes are described not as thieves but as robbers. And even as you are watching, they actually ruin you. Tayorna vashamagacche. Therefore, do not come under the sway of these likes and dislikes. And that's what Lord also mentions here. That one who conducts not as motivated or guided or governed by likes and dislikes, then the first step is that what should govern then our activities, our responses, the values, rather than our personal likes and dislikes. The values as taught by the scriptures. It is amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, kshantihi, arjavam, or ahimsa, satyam, akrodha, non-violence, truthfulness. So these are the values the scriptures teach us. And the duty they teach us. So may our actions and choices be governed by these values and not by our likes and dislikes. If our likes and dislikes are in keeping with the values, fine, you are very lucky, and that's what we want. But if at a given point in time you find that my likes and dislikes are contrary to the accepted values, all the values enjoined by the scriptures, then I set aside my likes and dislikes and I do what is proper to do according to the values. And this is how, in course of time, we become free from the spell or free from the control of these likes and dislikes. So Lord Krishna says, do not deliver yourself in the hands of likes and dislikes. So it is said, tatrayo mumukshur bhavati. And therefore here, yaha mumukshu bhavati, one who is a mumukshu, one who is desirous of moksha. Tabhyam vyuktehi shrotradibihi indriyahi. He should make his sense organs, make his mind free from the raga and dvesha. And that is not something to be accomplished in one day or one night. It is a long time pursuit, and for which there was what we call karma yoga. Karma yoga is performance of action with the attitude of yoga. While performing action also, I do not let my likes and dislikes govern the choice of action, but I let the values and the scriptural injunctions, they let them govern the choice of actions. And again, while responding to different situations, I do not respond according to my likes and dislikes. There again, I look upon the situation as something created by God, and thus I respond to them, as we said, with prasada buddhi, meaning as a blessing of God. And thus, even though things may be unfavorable, I just do not reject because something is unfavorable. Or I do not embrace just because something appears to be favorable. Unfavorable and favorable, all the situations are accepted as prasada of the God without reaction to them. Thus in course of time, one becomes free from these likes and dislikes, or our likes and dislikes slowly get molded in accordance with the likes and dislikes of the scriptures. Scriptures also give us likes and dislikes. So satyam vada, may you speak truth. That means may you have a liking for the truth. Satyameva jayate nanrutam, the falsehood never wins. So may you have a dislike for falsehood. Himsam na kuryat, do not hurt anybody. So may you not have a liking, may you have a dislike for violence. Dharmam chara, may you follow dharma, meaning may you have a like for dharma or righteousness. The scriptures also create in us what we call likes and dislikes. But those likes and dislikes are in keeping with what we call the order, the harmony that obtains. And when we make them our likes and dislikes, our life also becomes harmonious. And ultimately, of course, we even grow out of those likes and dislikes. Our present likes and dislikes are transformed to the likes and dislikes of the scriptures when we get prasadam adhigacchati. And that's how one gets prasada. Prasada means this swachhata or serenity. The mind becomes prasannam, meaning mind becomes serene. So what makes a mind dull or what makes a mind disturbed is this dirt of raga and dvesha or likes and dislikes, which are responsible for all the various reactions. And therefore, whether it is anger or whether it is resentment or whether it is jealousy or variety of reactions that we find in ourselves, generally speaking, we can trace them to some kind of a like or dislike or some attachment or aversion. Thus, when we constantly work with it, that means one has to be quite alert, one has to constantly be aware of one's own reactions, of one's own responses, and constantly scrutinize them. And see whether they are in keeping with the values. If they are not, then what is the source? Where are the likes and dislikes involved? What notions or complexes are involved? And this is how we constantly keep on resolving. And that's how mind becomes slowly and slowly serene, quieter, abiding, pure. Prasadam adhigacchati. And this person discovers prasada, meaning prasannata, a cheerfulness or an inner joy one discovers. Thus it is these ragadveshas that actually the likes and dislikes that disturb the pool of the mind or that pollute or make it muddy. And therefore the surface is not evident to us. But as the pool becomes clearer and clearer and quieter, then the beauty of what is there on the surface also becomes evident. And so at the moment they are only clouding and even distorting the beauty and the joy of the self. When the mind becomes then purer, then the joy or the ananda of the self also becomes evident, and thus one discovers joy within oneself. And this is how the wise man is found to be happy, because his mind is clean, is devoid of these reactions, and therefore happiness, which is the nature of the self, is something that is effortlessly experienced by him. So ragadvesha viyuktaihi indriyehi vishayan charan, when one contacts the sense objects which are necessary, avarjaniyan, unavoidable. Nobody says that you go around, and keep on indulging into sense pleasures. Nobody says that. But to the extent that you have to contact the sense objects, all right, contact or get involved only in those sense objects which are unavoidable. Meaning minimum which is required for the sustenance of the body or sustenance of your life. Other than that, of course, nobody ever recommends that you have to deliberately go out and create trouble for you. But you have to have certain contact with the world, certain contact with the objects of the world, but that contact also should be with a mind that is devoid of likes and dislikes. In which case, the contact with the sense objects will not create or will not initiate that ladder of fall. If there are attractions and aversions within, then a contact with the object will definitely create a reaction. And it will create in me a desire to acquire them or desire to avoid them. And unfulfillment of desire will definitely create an anger. and then all the rest of the things. But when the raga dveshas are not there, then the contact with the sense objects will not create any craving in me. And therefore, that will be what we call a healthy contact. Then I have the freedom, whether to acquire an object or not, whether to enjoy it or not, whether to contact it or not. Then I have the freedom. That's the difference there. So when raga dveshas are there, I do not have the freedom. Then the objects determine whether there will be a desire in my mind or not. Kama eshaha, krodha eshaha. This is also described in the 3rd chapter. Indriyani manobuddhi tasya adhisthana muchyate etair vimohayatyeshaha jnanamavritya dehinam. That this kama or the desire or the raga dveshas are in the sense organs, in the mind and in the intellect, in all the places. And that's how they delude this person. They justify even the things which he should not have been doing. He himself finds himself justifying things that are not proper or that are not in keeping with the accepted values. That's what the raga dveshas do. And therefore they govern my behavior, my responses, my reactions. When raga dveshas are not there, then I am in control of the situations. So it is said, Atmavashyahi. When likes and dislikes are not there, the sense organs are Atmavashyahi. They are within the control of oneself. Otherwise, I am in the control of them. There Swami Dayananda used to give a very beautiful example of this. This is my neighbor who is a dog. Swami Sa used to observe. She used to go take her dog for a walk in the morning. In the beginning, this lady used to take the dog for a walk. After a few minutes, it is the dog which took the lady for a walk. In the beginning, the dog follows, and later on, the dog starts running. Have you seen this? And the fellow runs, and ultimately, this woman is dragged after him. So in the beginning, I think that I am controlling my sense organs. Later on, it's sense organs who control me. I think that I am controlling the mind. Soon enough, it is the mind that starts controlling me. This is the thing. And this is when raga dveshas are there. But however, when raga dveshas are not there, then I find that the sense organs are also in my Atma Vashyehi, Vidhe Atma. Who is this person? He is Atma or the Antahkaranam. The mind also is such that it is available to him. And so, it is at disposal. When the raga dveshas are not there, we find that mind also is at our disposal and the sense organs are in our control. So this is how the Vedantins seek to control the sense organs in the mind. Not so much by disciplining them. Nothing wrong in disciplining them. But you cannot go too far by disciplining the sense organs in the mind, by restraining them. So Vedantins do not like restraint. Mano nigraha, chitta vritti nirodha, yogas chitta vritti nirodha, the restraint of the chitta vritti. That's not very desirable here. But what they wish to do is to master the sense organs and master the mind. And then the question is, what is it that makes this mind out of my control? How come I do not have control over my mind? Or how come I do not have the mastery over my sense organs? So let us eliminate the reason that makes them beyond my control or wild. And the reason is identified here as raga and dvesha. So we see the cause. Why is the mind restless? Accepting the restlessness of the mind, you try to restrain, that is one thing. But what makes the mind restless? What makes the mind distracted? The false values that the mind has. The false fascination it has for the objects. The mind itself superimposes a charm, or attractiveness upon the sense objects and then wants it. If the mind is objective, if the mind has discrimination, then it finds the sense object is fine as it is, but the attractiveness or the charm that I see is something that is imposed by me. Because if there was some inherent charm in a sense object, then everybody should want it. Only some fellow wants it, some other fellow doesn't want the very same thing. So what one sees as a charming or attractive thing, someone else finds it quite the opposite. That's the reason why what one wants to acquire is the same thing that someone else wants to get rid of. And that shows therefore that we have our own subjective or a personal outlook as far as the world is concerned. that we superimpose attractiveness and repulsiveness upon the world, and then respond to the world with a reaction of attraction or repulsion. And then we want something or want to get rid of something. So when we work with the cause, therefore it arises from what we call aviveka or non-discrimination, not knowing the true nature of the world, not knowing the true nature of the self. So dwell upon that. May you dwell upon the nature of the self. You've taken for granted that you are so and so, that you are an ego, that you are you are an unhappy person, or whatever it is. Is it true? The various conclusions that I have about myself, do I have a valid reason to accept them as valid conclusions? I've just taken things for granted. I've taken for granted as to who I am. I've taken for granted what the nature of the world is without really having scrutinized the basis of my conclusions. And thus Vedanta asks us and directs our attention to these very fundamental assumptions about life, very fundamental conclusions about life, about ourselves as well as about the world. And thus we will find so many projections constantly we are making. We are making projections upon our own self, we are making projections upon the world also. And that's what creates the likes and dislikes. Even likes and dislikes have a cause. And that is what we call aviveka or non-discrimination. And what causes non-discrimination? This projection, which arises from ignorance. So ignorance, avidya, not knowing the true nature of the self, not knowing the true nature of non-self. That brings about adhyaropa, projection, looking upon the non-self as the self and looking upon self as an incomplete being. And that, so avidya, asmita, as Yoga Shastra says. Avidya is the first one. Asmita, the sense of individuality. So taking the body as a self, taking the self as mortal, as ignorant, as perishable. From that raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Raga is attraction, dvesha is repulsion, abhinivesha, fear. So this is called pancha klesha. These are called klesha in the Yoga Shastra. And thus the source of all of this ultimately is in ignorance. And thus Vedanta all the time focuses our attention on ignorance. And aviveka, the non-discrimination arising from ignorance. Constantly our attention is focused there again and again. And so we keep resolving the cause, then the effects will go. As long as the cause remains, the effect will not go. You try to work with your mind, you try to work with your sense organs without understanding the cause as to what makes the mind what it is, or what makes the sense organs what they are. We are not going to be successful, in any great measure. So, raga-dvesha viyuktehi, with the sense organs, meaning the mind, which is now free from raga-dvesha, when one contacts the world, fine, that is what we call a healthy contact. I don't have any subjective projection, I am an objective person, is able to look upon the world and have a proper estimate of the things as they are. No more, no less. It is not that we have to reject the world, or we look down upon it, or nothing like that. Neither you embrace it, nor do you reject it. Just you see things as they are, or for what they are. Thus knowing the right place and the right degree of reality of the things is what is meant here. So atmavashyahi indriyahi vidheyatma. Vidheya atma antahakaranam yasya soyam vidheyatma. One whose mind is obedient, or one whose mind is at one's disposal. Not again a slave, not that we enslave the mind. Mind should be made a friend, as Lord Krishna says in the 6th chapter. Atmaiva hi atmano bandhuhu, atmaiva ripuhu atmanah. The mind alone can be our friend, and the mind alone can be our enemy also. Which mind is friend? The mind that is free from these reactions is a friend. Mind that is under the spell of reactions becomes our own enemy. And so wise man is the person whose mind is under control. Mind is friend. Sense organs are also well organized, obedient, under control. And when he goes around the world and contacts the world, his perception of the world is not vitiated by or distorted by the likes and dislikes, but he has an objective perception, therefore does not come under the spell of false attachments and attractions. And therefore, the contact with the objects then does not lead to the difficulties that were described in the earlier 2 chapters. And thus, prasadam adhigacchati, one attains prasadam, prasadaha prasannata. Prasannata means serenity. Like the water of a lake, which is serene. When the water is clean or pure and undisturbed, the surface is undisturbed, that surface of the water is called swachha or prasanna. And so also in the pool of the mind, when there is no dirt or mud of dislikes and dislikes, and there is no waviness of the distraction, the restlessness of the mind. Thus, when the mind is clean as well as abiding, such a mind is called prasannam, meaning a serene mind. And that reflects the beauty. Somebody said beautifully that when the lake of the mind is devoid of the dirt of likes and dislikes and the restlessness of distractions, then the heavens above get very beautifully reflected. The heavens above get reflected in the water when the water is serene. And so also when the mind becomes serene, it reflects the beauty of the self. And therefore, one should try to make the mind serene, meaning make it free from the effects of likes and dislikes. And that will also require, as I said, submitting the mind to the commands or the values of the scriptures. And also exposing the mind to the teaching, making the mind see the realities of life, and thus making it free from the superimpositions. Prasade sati kim syat. Alright, suppose you enjoy the serenity of the mind, then what do you achieve by that? Iti uchyate, because suppose your mind is serene, so what? Does it mean that you become free from, there can be all kinds of pains and suffering in life? How about all of those? And in verse 65, Lord Krishna answers that, Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasya upajayate prasanna chetaso. Prasade sati, when this mind attains that prasada means that serenity or purity or cheerfulness, asya yatehe sarva dukkhanam hanihi vinashah upajayate. For this yati means for this man of self-control or for this person of an abiding mind, sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. He says all the dukkha, all the pains and the suffering comes to an end. What kind of dukkhas are there? Or what are the sources of pain? Adhyatmikadinam. 3 sources of pain are there. The sources arising from one's own being, like the body and the mind, the pain arising from the surrounding, and the pain arising from the cosmic forces, like, I don't know, lightning, earthquake and stuff like that. So these are the 3 sources of pain. Well, one becomes free from all that pain. This is what Lord Krishna says. Why is it so? Because prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhih paryavatishthate. Because prasanna chetasaha, the one whose chetas of the mind is prasannam, swacham, clean or pure or serene, one whose heart has become serene or pure, ashu, quickly, buddhi paryavatishthate. In the mind of such a person, buddhi means knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Knowledge is of the nature of the Atma. See, the knowledge of the self, paryavatishthate, it becomes very well abiding. So knowledge of the wisdom becomes abiding only in the mind of a person who enjoys what we call the serene or a pure mind. Akashamiva parisamantat avatishthate. So buddhi paryavatishthate, just as a space, and like the space also is abiding, and so also the mind also becomes abiding. Buddhi Paryavatishtha. Buddhi also can be said to the mind of such a person becomes abiding. In short, when the mind becomes pure, automatically it becomes abiding. When the mind is impure, we find that mind is distracted. So purity means freedom from the raga and dvesha. So as we rid our mind of these likes and dislikes and these various reactions, automatically it becomes abiding. It becomes even free from distractions. And then the knowledge also becomes abiding. Atma rupenaiva nischali bhavati. Even the mind also becomes abiding in the self. Mind also becomes a self. Because mind also does not mind also does not remain or does not continue to have any specific form. When all the likes and dislikes are gone, the moment when the mind is pure, and when you are contemplating upon the nature of the self, then you find that the mind also abides and becomes one with the self. It no more causes now a separation between you and the self. So Atma Rupenaiva Nischali Bhavati, even that buddhi or the mind also becomes abiding as the very self. Because the essence of the mind also is the self. What is the truth of the mind? Truth of the mind also is self. Because ultimately mind arises. What is mind is nothing but the thoughts. And thoughts, when we analyze really, are nothing but the names and forms superimposed upon the awareness. And with these likes and when the mind becomes pure, even then it merges into its true nature, which is the self. Evam prasanna chetasah avasthita buddhehe kritakratyita yatah. So Shankaracharya remarks that thus, since for the one who enjoys that prasanna chetaha, meaning one who enjoys that tranquil mind or the serene mind, and of course, it is not merely the purity of the mind that is the subject matter here. When there is purity of the mind, then of course the knowledge becomes clear. The teaching of the scripture becomes clear only to the mind, which itself is clear. If the mind is clouded, then whatever we hear also becomes clouded. Our interpretations of what we hear in the scriptures also becomes clouded when our mind is clouded. Because whatever we listen to is ultimately going to be filtered by our mind. If our mind has already lots of prejudices and conclusions, then whatever we hear, even the scriptural teaching also is going to be distorted by our own mind. Like filtering water through a medium which itself is dirty, then the water also will carry that dirt with it. And similarly also, if the mind has these distortions, then whatever we hear also is going to be distorted. When the mind is undistorted, then the scriptural teaching also becomes very clear. And the person sees what the scriptures are trying to convey. So the knowledge also can take place in the mind which is serene, and knowledge can abide also in a mind which is serene. Thus, if you want to gain what we call an abiding mind, a quiet mind, a mind which remains with us under our control or at our disposal, then we should make the mind free from those factors which make it restless, which make it clouded. And these are the likes and dislikes. Tasmad ragadvesha viyuktaihi indriyahi shastra aviruddheshu avarjaniyeshu yuktah samacharati vakyartah. The idea is that one who is a mumukshu or one who is a seeker of knowledge, may he contact the objects of the world with the mind which is devoid of likes and dislikes. That means let us learn to separate our personal likes and dislikes, and let us learn to see the world in light of the teaching of the scriptures. And then slowly we become free from our own personal projections, and this is what one should strive to do, so that in course of time one attains a mind that is free from these reactions. That's the idea. Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।